Okay, so different transmission, exact same transmission, just a different one. This one's been pulled a little bit further apart. Same components, final drive, main shaft, input cluster, fifth gear shaft. So here's your main shaft, okay? And you notice we've got tapered roller bearings instead of ball bearings because the helical gears give a little bit of thrust load, so they're going to want to push one way. Don't ask me which way. Okay, they want to push one way, so we've got a little bit of thrust in here. We've got these tapered rollers mounted in opposite directions, just like we talked about when we did bearings, okay? Here, and we can see, first gear is at the bottom. There's our input cluster shaft. Let me show you this first. Same thing, tapered rollers, one solid piece. You break something, you put a whole new cluster shaft in. This is where your splines to your clutch disc. Are we seeing this good? Yep. Clutch disc goes here, so when your clutch is engaged, this whole shaft is turning as one unit. Okay? There's our first gear. So there's first. So your gears are going to be sitting like this. Little gear drives a big gear, first gear. And as you notice, as we go forward, second gear gets a little bit bigger, this one gets a little smaller. And they need to get bigger, smaller proportionately because it won't fit. We can't make this gear really big and leave this one big. We can't make one bigger and leave the other one the same size, or they're not going to line up. So proportionately, as this one gets bigger, this one has to get smaller a proportion amount. There's third and the third speed gear. There's fourth and the fourth speed gear. There's your first and second synchronizer, and we got the spur cut gears for reverse. Okay, there's and this is our third and fourth synchronizer. Okay, so we slide it down, we get third. We move it up, we get fourth. Okay, now when this is turning, we want to be going forward, and we engage one of these synchronizers. Our power flow is going to come from here to the locked speed gear. Which one will move? There we go. We've moved it into second. So that speed gear is now locked to the shaft. You see how, let me hold it this way. These ones turn, that one turns freely. This one, locked to the shaft. This one here doesn't move because it's now locked to the shaft. So this one locked to the shaft, the input cluster is going to force that gear to turn, and it's going to turn the main shaft. And then there is what's called our pinion gear. The pinion gear is attached to the ring gear. So they call this on the differential, they call it a crown and pinion, the pinion gear. And then there's the ring gear on the differential. So when this turns, it's because this gear is engaged, this is going to turn, and it's going to turn the final drive assembly. And when that turns, the drive shafts sit out here, it's going to turn the drive shafts. And we get our power output in whichever gear we've engaged. And my damn phone keeps going off. Okay? So this is how this unit is working. You can see the pinion gear here. And you can see here we have our fifth gear shaft. So we can have fifth gear. Let me put this down. So fifth gear is here. We don't even need the main shaft for fifth gear. Input cluster is turning. We engage this synchro. I don't know if it's going to come up because it's got, oh, there we go. Move the shifter. Now this gear is going to get locked to the shaft if I move it all the way. No, it's not moving. There we go. Now it's up. I got to hold it up. Fun. So when the input cluster is turning, come on. Cooperate. There we go. Got to hold it. So the input cluster is turning. And this is going to be held tight by the case. So I should show you that. This is held tight by the case. And when the input cluster turns, it turns the fifth gear shaft to that fifth gear. Fifth gear is now locked to the shaft. And we have power out through the fifth gear shaft pinion gear. which turns the ring gear, which gives us our overdrive. Now you can see, and as I was trying to show you in the class, there's our input cluster, 4th gear and 5th gear. These gears are identical size. So the gear ratio between 4 and the gear ratio at 5th at this end is identical. And they have to be the same size because they're meshed together. Remember I told you, 2 different gear ratios meshed at the same size, transmission goes boom. But how we get our 5th gear, the different overdrive or different ratio in 5th gear, is by having a different size pinion gear. If you take a look, the 5th gear pinion is bigger than the main shaft pinion. So in 4th gear, when this main shaft is locked here, and this 4th gear is locked, we're getting an output to the final drive with a small gear. When we lock 5th gear, we're getting output to the final drive with a slightly bigger gear. Slightly bigger gear turning the big gear than the small one, we're going to get a slightly different gear ratio, slightly higher. So instead of whatever, I don't know, we can do the math if we really want to. But I think we have about a 3 point something to 1 final drive ratio. Okay, those are good average numbers. So we're going to have a slightly different ratio here. So this say maybe, say 3.5 to 1. And here we might get 3 to 1. Okay, we could count the teeth if we want, but counting teeth is not really required. So you can see this 5th gear, the pinion is part of the shaft. So if you have a damage to the ring and the pinion, you have to replace the complete shaft. The same thing happens on this input cluster. We could take this input cluster shaft completely apart. Are we seeing that? Yes, we are. I'm going to move this over to here. Okay, now of course this one here is not going to cooperate, is it? No, you got to use a proper puller. These things have been beaten to death, and I don't have the proper puller, so I'm not going to force it. But all these gears, all these synchros come off of this shaft, and when they come off the shaft, you'll have the shaft with the pinion gear only, and that pinion gear is part of the shaft. Okay, I would like to take one apart. Hold on, let me look and see if I can find this in pieces. No such luck. No such luck. Okay, but there's the main shaft. 1st speed gear, 1st, 2nd synchro with reverse, 2nd speed gear, 3rd speed gear, 3rd and 4th synchronizer, 4th speed gear, 5th speed gear, input cluster shaft, 1 unit. That's the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th gear on the input cluster. And then there's our reverse idler, which I'll show you in just a second. Where is my reverse idler? I had one. I had a reverse idler laying around. And here we do. So here's our reverse idler, okay, on its own little shaft. I don't call it a shaft. When I ask you to name the shafts inside the transmission, input cluster, 5th gear, main. This is a shaft, but it's not, I don't really call it a shaft. So reverse, let's go in, no, that helps. I put it in right side up. Okay, so there's our main shaft back in. Here's our reverse idler. Goes in here, okay? There's the little lever right here. So this is what's going to engage reverse right here. Notice 5th and reverse are on the same linkage. So when you go into 5, and you back down into reverse. So this has got a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 reverse shift pattern. Okay? So we can slide that reverse lever up. I don't know if it will go for me or not. Okay, no, it will not. It's not cooperating, so I'm going to bypass the lever. Okay, there's reverse. So when we're in reverse, input cluster turns the reverse idler gear. The reverse idler gear will turn the gear on the synchronizer, and notice somebody put this synchronizer in upside down. You can tell. Notice I told you, very, very careful. You put these parts in upside down, it's not gonna work properly. Guy who did this last did it wrong. Okay, and you can see, and I can even see here, I'll bring the camera in closer. You can see the teeth are damaged on this side. Just like these reverse idler teeth, they've got a little taper and a bit of damage because these are going up and down, in and out this way. And if you don't come to a complete stop and that main shaft is still turning, you're going to get a little bit of grinding. So here's a reverse idler. So input cluster, going to turn the reverse idler. So this is going to turn it clockwise, counterclockwise. This can turn this clockwise, which will turn this counterclockwise. We go backwards. Okay, so very important. Putting things in right side up. This guy wouldn't get a shift linkage in either, because the shift forks are going to try to line up. It's going to either jam this into a gear or it's going to get screwed up. It won't even go in. Okay, so it's a perfect lesson. I love this. I love people when they make mistakes. Okay, so you can see if I'm engaged in the synchro. Okay, if I engage the synchro, the input cluster isn't engaged to the reverse idler. If I engage to the input cluster, I'm not turning the synchronizer ring. Okay, so idler always turns it one extra way. In our forward gears, clockwise, counterclockwise, clockwise. Wheels turn the correct direction, the car goes forward. When we throw in the extra gear, we go clockwise, counterclockwise, clockwise. Now we go counterclockwise, the wheels go in reverse, and we go backwards, okay? I'm gonna see if I can get this apart and show how that synchro should go. I'll take that shaft apart.